Hi everyone, here's the gang of four, our sons Tammy Nemeth, the inimitable Tammy Nemeth, who will be joining us shortly when her computer issues get resolved. I have with me the illustrious David Blackmon in Texas, and the ingenious Stu Turley at an undisclosed location somewhere in the American South. There's me, the often incomprehensible Irina Slav in Bulgaria, where it's autumn, the leaves are turning, and it's lovely. How's the weather where you are, David and Stu?
Yeah, it's perfect here in Texas. It was about 68 degrees this morning when I took the garbage out, and we're going to have a high of 84, which is like winter here in North Texas. So I'm very happy, very pleased. Summer is over.
And Stu?
And it is 64 degrees, but yesterday I was scalded by breaking my plumbing under my house. So, I could use a little colder weather here. So,
we'll send you some. So, this week we're talking about the UN General Assembly last week, or as we like to call it, UN Climate Madness Week, because of course the climate change was front and center. Everybody talked about how we need to do more about climate change, which is absolutely unexpected, complete news to everyone, and politicians asking for more money to be invested in the transition. And what was more interesting to me is, louder calls for centralization of power to national and supranational national governments and government-like organizations. David, what's your take on this trend?
Well, it was so interesting to me that our brilliant Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, really toned down his rhetoric over the past week. I mean, there was no talk of global boiling or the highway to hell or any of that stuff. He did, make some modest claims about, they weren't modest. He just toned down the rhetoric a little bit. He still thinks we're all going to burn up and die by 2050, which he's required to think, being the Secretary General of the UN. And he still wants us all to give up our standard of living in order to fight a 2-degree increase in global temperature averages, as predicted by computer models who can't tell us what the weather's going to be day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's just the same old crap from the UN. But the thing I noticed, in addition to the rhetoric about climate alarmism, which is what they're using as the trigger to do away with Western democracies and replace them with totalitarian forms of government, is he had a bunch of rhetoric about AI too, AI being a threat. So, hello, Tammy. Good morning. Tammy Nemeth is now with us. She had a little computer crash to deal with this morning, but we're so happy you're here. AI, and so he had a lot of rhetoric about AI being a danger now. And that tells me a couple of things. It tells me that they don't believe their canard about climate change as being the lever they can use to do away with Western democracies is working. They realize that major corporations and even some Western governments are now backing away pretty rapidly from all these ridiculous, ludicrous, overly ambitious climate targets they've been setting over the past few years. And they're looking for a new boogeyman. And so the new boogeyman, I think, is going to be AI, because it's so power hungry, and the threat it represents to the human race if it's not managed correctly. And of course, there are no better managers of threats on the face of the earth than Antonio Guterres and all the wonderful people at the UN. So that's my assessment of last week's UN meeting.
That's a very interesting point. We should come back to it. Tammy, what's your take on Climate Madness Week?
My take is the charter that they decided to unanimously put forward. Whatever, they didn't vote, but it was adopted. I don't really know how that works at the UN. But countries like Russia, whatever, didn't support it. I think there was only 7 countries.
Argentina didn't either.
Argentina didn't. But what does that support mean exactly? Was it people abstain? If you didn't vote, how do you get support? I don't quite understand. But there's a number of articles or whatever um, within that charter, the future one, that are quite disturbing, and it's about redoing the global infrastructure, like the global sort of network and stuff. So whether it's financial institutions that, they've been talking about needing a new Bretton Woods for at least 10 years now. And every year it gets a little bit stronger on the rhetoric and what they're doing. And I really think they are laying the groundwork in order to create a new international order. And like Carrie's comments to the WEF sustainable development stuff, he was going on about how the system's broken. And Guterres said the system's broken. And the leader of Barbados said we need a great reset, which I thought was interesting.
Where have we heard that before?
Use those words, okay?
Yeah, use those words. And I thought, oh, did they not get the memo? I thought it was something different now. And in Carrie's comments that have been talked about a lot, because like during the UN Climate Week, it wasn't just the UN. There was this other non-governmental group that did Climate Week. And then the World Economic Forum also did their sustainable development something or other meetings. And that's where Carrie had said this thing about the First Amendment's getting in the way because there's too much climate misinformation, disinformation, and so on. But he also talked about ESG and that the pushback against ESG is just American and it's fake. It's fake. So, and then he was all about, we all need to get on the bandwagon because money needs to shift and it needs to shift like yesterday. And so we need to be able to free up the mechanisms for institutional investors and large corporations to shift the money the way they need it to be shifted in order to accelerate the transition. So to me, that's the embodiment of climate madness, is that they're future planning how they're going to change the system at the same time that they want to talk about how they're going to collude to exclude businesses that actually make a profit.
Yeah. And what the money shift is what? It's a wealth transfer, which is what this whole thing is all about at its base.
Stu?
Not wanting us to get thrown off the air, I think that the UN should be thrown out of the United States, unfunded, disbanded, and thrown away. They are absolutely miserable people and a satanic cult.
There you go. Very succinctly put.
If you do look at the history of the UN, it is got a satanic cult built into the room and the foundations. I'll just leave it at that and know that you guys did a great job talking about what I could say legally.
Daniel, you can very easily be, called a Putin agent.
I am?
Talking about satanic cults stuff.
How in the world could I be a Putin? I don't even know him. I do a lousy imitation of him. How could I be?
It's hard to do.
I do a very lousy imitation of him. I'm not a Putin agent.
No, but they've been talking about that the West is basically conquered by a satanic cult, which is what you said. So I don't want to scare you or anything.
Oh, no.
Anyway,
Joseph McClellan says, keep doing this. And if we keep going this way, we won't be able to keep doing it anymore.
I do want to say, Irina, I do want to say that John Kerry is a non-elected official that has absolutely zero business speaking. And his daughter has absolutely zero reason for being in anywhere near a political office. And then John Podesta, who took his position after this, has absolutely zero reason and any authority to do anything and is overpaid and is corrupt. Well, they should have absolutely nothing to do with the United States.
Yeah, Podesta is one of those people who's never been elected to any office in his entire life, yet he's always hanging around the levers of power in our federal government. It's really extraordinary.
The comments look like they're going off already.
Nice spot for himself.
Oh, there we are.
What I found interesting was, David, your point about AI. That to me, it all looked like more talk and no action, because you have to spur everyone into action. I mean,
Right.
certain parts, certain countries, as Tammy said, they can talk and they can implement carbon taxes, but to do it on a global level, they would need more than just certain politicians saying, yes, okay, let's do it. I mean, the latest example is Indonesia, which was supposed to shut down a coal power plant, but
Yeah.
it said it's not going to, because it's going to cost too much to replace it with so-called renewables. But about AI, I've been noticing that, like today I wrote probably my 6th feature article for oil price on the insatiable appetite for energy of AI data centers. So I'm starting to notice that this is being pushed as a story more and more often.
Yes.
It's like every other day there's a story about artificial intelligence and how much of a strain it would put on the grid and on power generators. So I think there's something there. You're very, very right in thinking
Yeah, and there was
that
a
it's next boogeyman. But AI is supposed to help the transition. Like there was
right.
this story by some guy from somewhere, some researcher who had developed with his team this AI system for adjusting demand to supply by doing what? By by scheduling battery recharging.
Yeah.
The system assumes that every household in a building has a battery
Right.
that could be recharged at certain points in time without affecting your overall consumption, because that's the great thing about batteries and about AI.
Yeah. So I would add to that. Instead of it, there's a bit of kabuki theater with presenting AI as a boogeyman, because what I think is really wanting here from people like John Kerry and others is government control of AI. So
Yeah.
they don't want the private
Yes.
corporations, unless they're cooperative, to have control over it. But if they can say that, oh, we need these regulations, we need to be able to do this and that in order to make sure that AI isn't being abused by people or abusing people or whatever. To me, that's the signal that the government wants to have control, whether it's setting up certain regulatory frameworks or whatever, because as Irina says, they need the AI in order to manage the great technological achievements of the green transition.
Right.
Oh, I think they need AI to manage the narrative.
And us.
To manage the
As
narrative, to censor
And
speech, to
Kerry
shut
said.
down X, to
And
shut down TikTok. They're going to have
Kamala
to
said
have AI,
that
and they're going
blatantly.
to have control of it.
Co-
And that's what they were doing at the UN last week, was staking out their territory to be the global regulator of AI.
Yeah.
Just as Congress has this committee, our Congress in the United States has this committee that supposedly is going to develop regulations over AI in the United States. Now, who do you think on that committee or anyone on their staff has the slightest ability to understand how AI works and what its potential is? There's literally no one. And guess who the Biden administration's point person on AI regulation is? Kamala Harris.
Harris.
Okay. So these know-nothings, these people who know nothing about anything, are going to regulate AI, the most complex, high-tech development of the human race in history. Okay. And the UN is even more ignorant about it. There's nobody at the UN who even knows as much as members of Congress do. So they're staking out their territory to be the global regulator of it. And they all want to have control over it so they can use it for their own purposes. I mean, this is how they always do things. And it's no surprise they're doing the same thing with AI.
What's interesting is that even if they can, silence dissenters such as ourselves on public networks or whatever, reality is what it is.
Is
And
it?
there are attempts to put EVs and heat pumps and wind and solar is backfiring spectacularly in the real world, not on social media. Heat pump sales in Europe are down significantly, and it's not because of something that someone on X said. No, they're down because people don't want them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like
How
EVs.
to fight that? They think they're trying to, they can fight physical reality by controlling the narrative. I think this is idiotic. It's very dangerous, but it's also idiotic.
And forcing mandates, right? So with the
Enforcing
EVs,
mandates,
like,
because that works
right?
so well.
Yeah, like in the UK, where the dealers have to sell a certain percentage of EVs or they get fined. And there's another law that the conservatives had put on the back burner. I'm like, why didn't they just get rid of it? But basically, the dealers of who and the people who sell and install heat things for houses, whether it's natural gas boilers or heating oil, they have to sell a certain percentage of
Heat
heat
pumps.
heat pumps, or they get fined like a ridiculous price. And so
Also,
they're like,
it works so well with EVs. Let's do it
Yes.
with heat pumps.
Exactly.
These
ration,
people are
rationing heating.
geniuses.
Well, they
Yeah.
figure if they manage the pain at the outset, so people whatever, but they'll comply. Eventually, it's a compliance.
Yeah.
They force compliance.
Yeah, but if you can't afford a heat pump, you'll just sit in a cold house or
And
get
die. Or
deeply
get sick.
into debt.
Yeah.
Get
And
into
they don't
debt,
really
get
care.
sick, go to the public healthcare system, which can't handle people. Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. And yeah, I hope that reality hits sooner rather than later. But the way that the progressive movement is going these days, they really don't care about reality.
No, they
They
don't.
don't.
And
So
that's what's most dangerous to them. I'm amazed that do not seem to realize it. They believe in the narrative and they believe they're winning the narrative. But reality is right there.
Yeah. But if they can control communications, I mean, that's their whole conceit. And it's the reason why they're so anxious to censor everything. Because if they can control
Yes.
the flow of information, then they can win the narrative. I mean, think about our presidential election here in the United States. Kamala Harris had the lowest public approval rating of any vice president in American history before the Democrat Party forced Joe Biden out of the race and replaced him with her. And then the media, our 98% of our media establishment is fully in the tank for the Harris campaign. And they ran this 3-week focused propaganda effort to build her up in the public's mind. And now we're in a 50-50 race. Well, with a balanced news media reporting on this presidential race, it'd be about 75-25 in favor of Trump. So if they understand, if they can absolutely control the flow of information, they can continue to win elections without having to rig them. And have mass mail-in ballots that they're able to defraud the election. So, I mean, they're right to an extent about they can win and keep winning if they can control information, because that does enable them to some extent win the narrative and over whatever reality is.
Yeah, but that would be only working up to a certain point, because
yes, I
at a
agree.
certain point you can no longer ignore reality because it will smack you in the face.
Yes,
as we know.
yes, and hopefully that'll happen on November 5th.
Yeah, hopefully it will happen sooner rather than later, as Tammy said.
There is a pattern. There is a pattern developing, and you saw it with, as Tammy pointed out, John Kerry saying that he needs to control the narrative on X, and then Kamala Harris also said the same thing, and that she needs to do the same thing. Is that she feels that Elon does not have the right, have the right to own X.
Yeah.
And that is just unbelievable to me, that the only reason we know about the assassination attempts of what's going on is because of X. David Blackmon just got pulled off of LinkedIn Was it an accident? No, I think it's because David Blackmon, this great man that I know, happens to speak the truth once in a while.
I didn't even say anything on that post that they
No, they
objected
didn't
to. I
say
just
hogwash.
posted a video that had been posted out on X.
They don't like
they
you.
wanted to censor. Yeah,
I am censored as
Proud of
well
it.
too. I am proud to be censored, and I'm proud of that fact.
Well,
Yeah.
so if Musk isn't allowed to own X, that's not right. Then how can Mark Zuckerberg be allowed to own Instagram?
because
Or
he
Facebook.
cooperates with the
Everything
email
else,
community to
Right?
censor things.
owns.
Mark Zuckerberg
And
is
it's the
trying.
same thing. It's the same thing. These double standards are becoming so obvious, so unashamedly obvious. Oil and gas companies are making profits, and that's unacceptable. Musk owns X and can let people, talk freely without censoring anyone. Although I've heard that there is some censoring, but anyway, it's not the Twitter of the past, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, did you see Guterres's speech to the UN, which I
Yes.
had commented in the
I
email
read
that
the whole thing. I did it to myself.
I know it's painful, isn't it? But he wasn't nearly so hyperbolic as he normally is. But one of the interesting things he put in there was that basically it's bad that oil and gas companies and coal companies are making a profit.
Yeah.
And that
Oh,
if
yes.
we
Which is
want the
all massive.
transition to continue, we got to take that money that they're making in profit and redirect it, redistribute it to green ventures, which is basically what the UK windfall tax is offshore, right? Where it's like you basically get zero profit from your operations. You get to break even, whatever, if you're lucky. And they don't, and I think here it's meant to discourage shareholders so that the shareholders
Right.
will divest of their own volition, knowing full well that they're not going to be making a profit.
In my
Hey,
prediction,
and what's the next? Go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, David. In my prediction, you're about to see the climate darling energy leader was Germany. Germany has deindustrialized because of bad energy policies following climate change. The UK said, hold my beer. And they are absolutely destroying their economy, their culture, and their entire business ability to survive with the most unbelievable, horrific energy policies. What I'm reading about the energy policies in the UK are just absolutely what not to do.
Yeah.
And then you've got Governor Newsom in California sitting back and going, I want to play in this lousy sandbox. Holy cow, Batman. This man is like, Germany was his poster child. UK said, hold my beer. And he's like, I'm going to strangle the cat and prove that I am absolutely miserable. Holy smokes. Did I get that right?
I think you did. I think
Absolutely.
you got it absolutely
They
right.
keep at it. They double down on what doesn't work, and they triple down on what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Germany just abandoned its forecast for any economic growth this year.
And
really?
UK this morning, it's all over the news about the last coal plant. Yay, closing in the
Yay,
UK.
well done, UK.
Well done,
to
UK.
Go. And you know
We
what?
can pay
to
more.
balance the load when sun's not shining and wind's not blowing.
Oh, they'll
And
just import it from Norway.
From the new
And
interconnects.
Norway doesn't have enough to export.
And then the UK gets the highest price energy bills in the world. Yay! Way to go.
That was for industrial use, right? So in the UK, they separate it between residential and industrial use. When you average the residential and industrial together, they're number 3. But when you do just industrial, they're number 1. And like by a long shot compared to the European Union, even more than Germany and the United States. I mean, it's like you said, hold my beer.
How is it even surviving in the UK, Tammy?
They can't, which is why they have, it was the first time in 100 and some years that the UK was not on the top industrial countries, because the companies are just folding up. They're moving offshore, and it's just incredibly expensive to do anything. Now they're talking about they want to change. They want to change for small businesses that you pay per mile for traveling around. And we
Yeah.
had a fellow who came over to repair our dishwasher, and he said they're going to bring in this tax. I'm going to go out of business because there's no way I can charge more. He said I'm already charging what little bit I can to make a bit of a profit, and that will just be completely gone, and I'll be in the red with this charge per mile thing. So, yeah.
A very wise political
Right.
commentator in the UK a few years ago said that the goal, the ultimate goal of the climate alarm movement in the UK is just to turn the country into a big tourist park. Okay. To get rid of all of industry, shut down all reliable electricity, get rid of all industry, and turn the whole country into a big tourist park. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're well down the road in accomplishing that. And frankly, they're doing the same thing to Germany. There's all these companies. There's zero recognition among these lunatics that corporations are in business only to make a profit. If they're not making a profit, they no longer exist. And so if they can't make a profit because utility bills are too high, what are they going to do? They're going to move to China or the United States or some other country where the utility bills are a lot lower. This is what they're going to do. It's the only rational decision they can make.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what they're doing. And that's what Great Britain, sadly, is headed to being. And it's going to be a lot of people living in poverty because tourist parks don't make nearly as much money as industrial powerhouses do.
And I
don't think there'll be tourist parks.
I think the United States is gaining gear in saying, hold my beer. We could be just as bad.
Yeah, I agree, if these elections keep going the wrong way, but one of the positive things about the power needs of AI is that it's leading to all these decisions to restart mothballed nuclear facilities. And just today, the Wall Street Journal has a feature article in its energy section talking about the fact that the Biden-Harris administration just gave a $1.5 billion grant to a power company in Michigan to restart the mothballed Palisade nuclear facility. So even the Biden-Harris administration is admitting now that we need to at least build more nuclear. And I still predict that within 2 years, we'll be building more new coal plants.
And David, I did not have
ones.
Yeah.
Sorry. I did not have 3 Mile Island opening up because Microsoft needed AI on my bingo card at all. I did not see that one coming. A 3 Mile Island opening again, did not see that.
That's the thing about AI. Nobody saw any of this coming a year and a half ago. That's how rapidly this has all shifted.
No, unbelievable. But I think that AI has absolutely eliminated net zero. There's absolutely no way that net zero will ever happen with AI because people are going to be demanding electricity and coal will remain king.
Yeah, maybe it just, it accelerated things and exposed the inherent problem with the energy transition.
I like the way you said that. Expose the inherent transition problems. Well said.
Yeah, because the transition relies on a surge in electrification. What did these people expect to happen when you electrify as much of everything as you can? More demand. So you would need more supply. It's not going to come from solar panels and wind turbines.
Which
and
we've been
ladies
saying
and gentlemen,
for 2 years.
is why we call this the Energy Realities Podcast.
That's why we changed the name to Energy Realities, because we've been saying this forever.
Yeah.
Right. But I would say that the AI issue and net zero, it's a bait and switch. Because if the whole point of net zero was to get control over how people live and to change the standard of living and to make that transformation. And they need the AI to do it. They keep talking to people that you have to do this and that and everything else. But now they can switch it out and say, well, it's not really going to be successful unless we have the AI. And then by the time people realize that the net zero was never the point in the first place, it's too late.
Yep.
Oops.
What a world. What a time to be alive.
That's my negative.
Well,
First time
bit
David
today.
Blackmon's ever quoted me. Oops. I like that, David. Thank you.
Okay, shall we do the headlines?
Here we go. Let's see who the first victim is.
Victim.
You made it me. Okay. I'm the first one on there. So it's like, okay. So the second story there, which is the headline that the UK says goodbye to coal. That's what Irina mentioned and David, that the story's today, because today's September 30th, and this is the last day for the coal plants, and I'm sure they're going to blow them up or something like they did the other ones. So you can't turn it back on, heaven forbid. So when the UK says goodbye to coal, it's also what Irina and David said. What are you going to replace the stable energy with? And there are, I think, maybe some new natural gas plants coming online. I don't know if they were sensible enough to have them online before they close this one, but given how they operate, I wouldn't be so sure. So they also invested in lots of interconnectors, and there's plans for even more. And Catherine Porter had a really great report about how the interconnectors aren't good for national security. Because the whole thing they're saying is that by getting rid of all this stuff, we're not only saving the climate, we're becoming more energy secure, which is like the biggest gaslighting in the world. So we'll see what happens, if they'll blow it up or if they'll keep it on standby just in case. It's unclear. But given this government, I think they'll blow it up. And
Wow.
then the other article here is from Canada, and the headline, it says federal panel calls for cutting Canada's emissions in half by 2035. And this is the net zero advisory body that the government of Canada appoints. And everybody on that advisory board is an activist or part of the whole sustainability transition industry, think tanky, whatever. And so they all have a certain viewpoint, and they're talking about, in order to achieve cutting those emissions, Canada needs a legislated firm carbon emission budget. So they'll arrive at some number based on whatever they determine the global number is and what's Canada's fair share, and then tell the economy, the businesses in the economy, you must meet these targets by this date or else, which is another mandate, right? Where what are they going to do? Fine, shut companies, tax them, whatever. And the thing is, if the companies could very well just close and move elsewhere or whatever. So I'm not surprised that this body made this recommendation. It's par for the course for Canada that, are they trying to do this race to the bottom with the UK and Germany and California? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, they want to be in this race as well. It's so exciting, and everybody's talking about you.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty bad. So
the unbridled hubris.
Yeah.
In that second story, the arrogance is just overwhelming. On the coal thing, blowing up the coal plants, it's like how the British Army, going through Europe in World War II, blew up the bridges after they'd gone over them, so the German army couldn't follow them, right? And so now you didn't have any bridges to get over the canyons and rivers. And what happens if things go wrong in the UK? You're blowing up your own energy bridges, and that's a dangerous thing to be doing.
And there's no one coming after you. There's nobody threatening you with anything to
relying on
your source of baseload generation.
Right.
Yeah.
And relying on interconnects is extremely bad.
Yeah. Because what
Well,
happened when Norway doesn't have the energy to sell?
Exactly.
And this is the same policy that the Canadian government is promoting. They're telling the different provinces, if you don't have enough hydro or you don't have enough wind and solar, just invest in interconnects. And unfortunately, the province of Saskatchewan, for example, has spent a whole crap load, sorry, forgive my language, paying for interconnects from North Dakota. It makes no sense. We have, in Saskatchewan, they have so much coal, so much natural gas, so much uranium. They could be doing their own energy and exporting it, but instead they're wasting tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions in an interconnect with North Dakota.
Because they're being told to do this, or because they choose to do this?
Both. It's like they're being told that they have to do it, and then they feel like they have no other choice but to do it. It's one of those false choices. They really have no difference. So
really sad.
It's very sad.
Okay.
Fun.
Okay, I'm done.
Irina?
Thank you. These are two of my favorite stories this last week. So first of all, a high-profile clean energy startup is running short on cash. And guess what? No, you would never guess what. It's not the only one.
Wow.
Amazing.
So this startup wants to do something, ammonia or something, via a very low carbon emission process or something. The point, however, the process is unimportant. This company has a deal for $1 billion in financing from the federal US government. But to do that, it has to, make some progress. I'm sorry, I'm trying to stay serious, but this is so utterly unserious.
Nobody could have seen this coming, Irina.
No. So they're burning through cash. They have had additional financing from some major donors, because this is what they are. They are not investors. These companies are donors, asset managers, big names. They're injecting these people into this company, probably hoping to get a return on this investment when the federal government loan comes through, which it may never do, because the company is, experiencing scaling challenges, scaling problems, which apparently are very frequent, and it always happens, and they just need a little more time.
Yeah.
All the usual explanations, but I love the delicate suggestion that it's not the only company experiencing these problems. It's really amazing that green startups are not up and going like that and scaling and getting their money.
They just don't have enough money. If only we could shift more of it.
Another fundraising round, and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
If it was Orsted, they'd already be demanding more money from the government, right? Their CEO, that's his knee-jerk reaction to everything.
And to learn that they have to show something for it. We did this, we need more money. They have nothing to show for. And
Nothing.
Then there's my second favorite story. This 47% drop in heat pump sales. New industry boss says European demand is key, and it's not there.
Go figure.
Yeah, it's really amazing. They're so cheap. They're so efficient. Did you guys see actually the US climate change ministry or something tried to rewrite the laws of physics and then said it didn't? When it said on X that consider a heat pump which is 3 times more efficient than a gas boiler. Excuse me, give me a second.
That had to be a John Podesta.
How is it 3 times more efficient than a gas boiler? Well, it generates 3 times the energy that it consumes. And when people call them out for this, and they mock them, and they tell me you just rewrote the laws, we must have confused some people that we rewrote the laws of physics. No, we didn't. We're just saying that heat pumps are 3 times more efficient. And they started,
Sure.
they got muddled up in explanations, and it was ridiculous, and it was also sad and tragic because if you think about all the people who did believe the hype and did believe that heat pumps are more efficient than gas boilers, even if not 3 times as efficient, these people are now saddled with a bill to pay because only the wealthiest can actually afford to pay for the whole thing up front and have it installed and have the retrofitting necessary. And now they're baffled by this 47% drop in heat pump sales.
Yeah.
And some UK official or other was saying, I think it was an FT story, that we now have to make heat pumps look good.
Well, of
Look
course, it was an FT story.
Irina, in Texas, we call that putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
I don't think you're alone in Texas in calling this.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We got to make it look better to suck people in. Isn't that like the epitome of fraud?
Yeah.
And misleading misinformation?
You need to make it look good.
Yeah, in a just
To
society,
entice
it
people
is.
to buy them and then stay cold and pay huge electricity bills and wonder what went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
We
What a
had
world.
a heat pump when we lived in the south of France, and there was one winter where, well, actually every winter that we were there, it would freeze up. If it got below like 5 degrees Celsius or something, we could see literally the ice forming on the outside. And when it got below zero, oh my gosh, it was a nightmare. And we had to buy portable electric heaters to keep the rooms warm, had the fireplace going. I mean, it was insane. And that's the south of France. I know they say, well, they're much better now. Are they really?
No.
Are they really? What chemical are they using? They say, well, we have to use CO2 in it in order to make it more efficient, which is the most hilarious thing. So they have to put gases in there. But anyway,
yeah.
There's a
Goodness
reason why
gracious.
nobody likes them.
Yes.
Speaking of nobody liking them.
Oh, this is me. So the EU is trying to extend its regulatory reach on ESG to the United States. The EU
Holy
is about to finalize and make effective a new ESG related reporting regulation that is incredibly complex and costs millions of dollars to comply with. And it further says that, and it doesn't just apply to companies in the EU. Okay. There's a provision in there that says if you're doing more than $450 million worth of total business within the EU, you have to comply with this regulation too. And of course the Biden-Harris administration is doing nothing to prevent that reach extending into the United States. About 31% of the companies that would have to comply with this that are not in the EU are American companies, but the Biden-Harris administration doesn't think this is a problem. This is, for those wondering, this EU regulation is vastly more complex than the regulation the SEC here in the United States is trying to put into effect. But of course, it's the subject of massive litigation in the U.S. courts and will be overruled by the Supreme Court eventually, so it won't go into effect. Well, this is just a backdoor way for a foreign regulatory agency to require even worse regulations on American businesses. And Biden-Harris administration not only won't do anything to prevent that, they actually are thrilled to death by this because this is their goal. So that's why that's happening. Then the second one, Stu, do we have the video clip? You've got to watch this video clip. This is
I'm at the Off-Grid Living Festival, and this is the Commodore Off-Grid and Solar
Off-Grid Living
Pumping
Festival.
Specialists.
Yeah,
They've
this is in
massive
Australia,
solar
folks.
arrays. But you might be able to hear something in the background, and in fact, you might be able to see something.
Nice.
It's pumping out of an exhaust pipe there, because it's
and watch this part,
today,
Dave.
and they're trying to supply power to the various tents and things. And the result is that you are literally ending up with smoked cheese. It's lovely cheese, by the way, these guys, but it's now getting smoked. Diesel smoked cheese doesn't seem to be the best advertisement for the power of solar.
So I'm
you
sure
get a laugh out of it.
this Commodore company.
I mean, I get it; these things happen, but I'm just kind of enjoying the delicious.
But look, Commodore, if you noticed at the first of the clip, don't replay it, but if you noticed, this Commodore company was so certain its solar array would not be able to power this festival that it was putting on. This is in Australia. It literally put its logo on the diesel generators that are actually supplying the power to the solar festival. Okay. That's how hypocritical all of this actually is. And so, but good for them. They're a smart company. I'm sure they're making a lot of money on their diesel generators. I'm not sure they're making a lot of money on their solar arrays.
That's a feature. That's a feature. Smoked.
Yes, it's a feature. Yeah. Diesel smoked cheese. I love it.
Hey,
that's all I got. I'm easy this week.
Hey, David, real quick, if we're gonna electrify, I want to know if there'd be a way to get electric bikes in. Do you think that they would be going great in Bulgaria and in London, Tammy? Because here's one that is great in urban Chicago. I found this one.
Least likely to be stolen.
Look at this
bike of all time. You can leave it sitting in front of thousands of people and no.
I mean, I gotta get me one of these.
In case you can't tell, this is designed to mimic an electrical box. When you park it next to one,
it looks like James Bond in a ghetto.
You can park it anywhere.
Just a regular e-bike
as long as
from the internet, but this one has been transformed. Into
okay, so we got to do that. All right,
literally something James Bond.
I love it.
Okay. Now,
it's wonderful.
That is absolutely wonderful. First one, let's go to Biden-Harris won't hold offshore oil and gas lease sales since the first time. This is absolutely miserable. So when she
also
is
a violation of federal law. Anyway,
thank
go ahead.
you.
Yeah.
And absolutely, we're dead on right. If she says, "Oh, I won't ban fracking," right, she is going to ban fracking and has done so with the Harris Biden administration this entire time through this entire thing. Offshore oil production in the Gulf of Mexico accounts for 14% of the total production in the U.S., and production of the Gulf has remained unchanged for the past 5 consecutive months. What this has done is the decline curves are now going to kick in. And this is really going to be a big deal because there's not been much in the exploration side of things to replace the decline curves. In the other story, Ted Cruz, I love this story. Ted Cruz is in the fight for his life, trying to fight millions and millions of dollars. David and I had the pleasure of talking to Senator Cruz, and he is a energy knowledgeable man. And it really makes me airsick that the Harris Biden administration is conducting a war on the export for LNG. You want to talk about ESG? It's sad that it makes more sense to export LNG, ship it across the world, import it in as natural gas in order to burn and get less output on the environment than burning coal. That's really pretty sad. But we're not good people to support our folks in the EU with this kind of a ban. It's a chilling precedent. The permits are not reauthorized. Over 7,000 high-paying jobs will disappear, and $24 billion investment in the Rio. There's no precedent for this decision, Cruz continues. Charles McConnell, the former Assistant Secretary Energy of the Department of Energy in the President Obama's administration, says if allowed to stand, the precedent from this ruling would absolutely draconian to investment process. This is what we're facing. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Hey, just as a side note, I had some cat videos of cats that were absolutely wonderful. I got to get me a cat after y'all have turned me on to some cats. I got some great
That's
things.
what I've been telling you, man.
Oh, cats rock. But let me show you. Can a cat do this? Okay, now this is cool. I want me a fur missile. That dog just knows he's cool. Will a cat do that, Tammy?
Wouldn't need to.
As I said, if it could be bothered, but they can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so we've seen this one. Everybody needs a fur missile. I love that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty
We all need
amazing.
a fur missile. But here's where it gets really good. Dogs are now being recruited into the military. We are short 2,000 pilots. And this is the new administration's way to solve it. I think we're good to go here, guys. Now look at this.
Cats, but here the song is really spot on.
And to make this video just killed the UK's power bill. I'm sorry, this is cool. Now, are you guys going to get a dog or a cat now? I don't know that I told you.
Well, you didn't show the cats as paratrooper ninjas.
I do have that one. I'll show that next week. So
We've
That's it
got
for me.
there's a comment here. Did you see that one?
This one?
Yeah.
For our podcast listeners, Stu, but I heard last week the Permian Basin associated gas production has totally displaced the Appalachian Basin on supplying the go to market. I'm
Mexico.
assuming LNG terminals currently exporting 15 BCF per day. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know that they have completely displaced the Appalachian Basin.
Yeah,
We still have those two pipelines coming down to the Gulf Coast with natural gas for these LNG terminals. But they probably could. You know, the Permian Basin is the second biggest gas producing basin in the United States. So, I mean, there's plenty of production there to do that with.
The bottom line is they're going to do it. And this was actually pretty funny. Turley, you have too much fun.
Yes.
I'm mentally 12. So,
yes, GOM stands for Gulf of Mexico.
Gulf of Mexico.
Okay. Okay. And then we also had Lord Bailey. Love Lord Bailey. For our podcast listeners, the EU taxonomy legislation mandates large companies disclose to the extent that their revenues align with the EU's criteria for green or sustainable economy activities. So it's necessary or unnecessary reach for more control.
It's always unnecessary.
Always.
Can we go back to this Permian Basin LNG thing?
Sure.
Because I just want to point one thing out. That's our current export capacity is 15 BCF a day. We've got 12 BCF a day of terminals currently under construction. Although the Rio Grande LNG has been completely irrationally held up by the Biden-Harris administration a couple of weeks ago, pulling their permit to move ahead with their construction that has been underway for a full year, by the way. And so this is another reason why this election is crucial. But we've got 12 BCF more under construction, folks. And that's with the Harris-Biden administration holding up all the permits for newly proposed terminals. So there's a lot more underway.
So technically not banning fracking, just can't let you actually get it anywhere.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And not holding any new lease sales on federal waters or federal land.
And as a
violation of the law.
And they're waging war on domestic use of gas.
Yeah.
And as a U.S. citizen,
but not banning.
Why in the world would you want to do business with the United States as a foreign country? There is
that's the whole point of the moratorium on permitting. That's the whole
There
point.
is zero reason. In fact, I've been talking to a lot of folks. There are pipelines coming up, and Japan is going to go to Russia as an ally. Bookmark this discussion.
Yeah, well, it's closer, Stu. That's geographical. It's closer.
Yeah.
Well, they're aligning pipelines to it and that has been banned by the U.S., and they're going to do it without the U.S.'s permission because of this administration.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but
I'm surprised.
I'm actually a little bit baffled. Well, I'm not, but I'm pretending. Wasn't Japan a sovereign country? I mean, it should be able to do whatever it wants without anybody's approval or disapproval.
It should be.
I agree. But as part of the G7 and the fact that the G7 is pushing all of this stuff, I'm very surprised that Japan would take that position. But, ultimately they have to pay attention to their own survival. What do they need, right?
Do you want to buy gas from Russia or enter World War III? Would you like to remain, would you like to remain a sovereign nation or do business with the United States? I would pick peace. Yeah.
And honestly, I think part of the whole changing of the shutting off LNG and everything, it's really so that the EU can have the United States with high energy prices to be at the same level as the EU, because the EU is like crazy expensive versus the United States, and the IEA stats, as distorted as they are, actually show that.
Why would they want to do that?
Because everybody dies together. It's I talked to Paul Tyson. He's like, it's a prisoner's dilemma. And if everybody's not doing it, it will fall apart. And the EU needs everybody to be doing all of this net zero stuff, have high prices and everything else. Otherwise, people can just go to a jurisdiction like the United States, which has lower prices, and therefore industry shifts there. Right. And the thing is, so if they don't go to the US, where are they going to go? Are they going to stay and do that, or are they going to go to China? Which,
can we
is a possibility.
Can I take, just before we go, I want to answer this one question. Just curious, David, do the blocks in shallow and deep water Gulf of Mexico qualify as oil and gas reserves in the Permian Basin? No, they do not. Permian Basin is a discrete basin in West Texas, southeast New Mexico. It's about the size of South Carolina. But it's hundreds of miles away from the Gulf of Mexico. So those are just discrete sets of assets there, underground assets.
Cool.
That's all I got.
This was a fun show. Thanks for letting me play in your sandbox.
Yeah, thank you.
The face muscles are aching from all that laughing.
You have to laugh because it is absurdly funny.
Either laugh or you cry.
We'll have some great cat videos next week.
Woohoo!
And an actual cat.
Yes, I'm in favor of cats.
An actual cat. Okay.
Make sure you have an actual cat to show us.
A little kitten.
I'll bring Max up here with me and I'll show him.
Okay.
Yeah, we can bring them on. Okay, that's crazy cat lady talk now. Have a great weekend.